Hello there, and welcome back to the cricket draft, where we are at the end of that initial county championship block. 7 fixtures done. We can have a little refresh, we can have a change of format and start talking about some T20 whackers instead. But my name is Dan Jadzovic, joined by our analyst and expert, who I might add is currently sat behind me, is Dan Weston. But Dan, how are you? And how was Gameweek 8 for you?
Yeah. Well, it was good on day one because I was ahead of you in our little mini league, and then I wouldn't say it all went wrong, but certainly it went right for you, and you ended up getting not far off 2,000 points. I got over 1,500, which I didn't think was too bad, but still put me outside the top 1,500 out of all the players, and. No players in my dream team, although, as I say, I still had a 1,500 point week, with Ryan Higgins finally producing for me. I mean, as last week I said I was going to get rid of him,
You
but
did.
I kept the faith because Dan Lawrence was unavailable unexpectedly, and so therefore I used a transfer on Dan Lawrence, and I also used a transfer on Michael Booth as a bench option, which ended up going okay because I bought in Ben Green on the bench and used him as a 12th man, and yeah, it wasn't outstanding, but he got 102 points, which helped a little bit as well.
Yeah, of course. It was a bit of a tricky week, wasn't it? With some not
Yeah.
strange, is that the right way to describe it? I don't know, but strange kind of omissions from county squads. You mentioned Dan Lawrence there. Tom Banton wasn't included in the Somerset squad that travelled up to Durham as well. Which, despite the fact that yes, the form since that opening weekend hasn't been fantastic, there would have been a lot of people as a cheaper option who would have kept him in the tides, and myself being one of them. So I did actually have to start the week at -75. I think I could have got away with it, but I really wanted to just to refresh a few things. And I looked at Warwickshire at Worcestershire and saw that as a match-up and thought, well, there's some points there. Unfortunately for me, I did pick the two wrong seamers. I firstly used my double captain Googly, so I've got no Googlies left, Dan. I gave one to Ed Barnard, who didn't do particularly well, and then Ethan Bamber, who I thought was going to take absolute poles against Worcestershire, returned 82 points. So I did recoup that -75. That's not the problem, but I didn't benefit from it quite as much as what I thought I would. Had hundreds, didn't I, from Wayne Madsen, Save Zabe, and John Simpson, which was nice. Liam Dawson, I kept the faith with the captain's armband as well, and I don't think many would have seen that game being bowled out and being completed just inside 3 days. But yeah, overall, a pretty good week. I was inside the top 500, 1,700 points, and I can't really complain. So yeah, good for me.
Can't complain.
No, good for me. And as you said before we started recording, there is a lot of first-class cricket left to play across the course of the 2025 season, but we will be taking a break and focusing on T20 cricket, which will come later on in this episode. In this episode as well, we are going to be joined by BBC presenter Ben Cajee as well to talk all things cricket draft, his team, his signings, and all the good things like that. So we've got another guest for us. But in Game Week 8, the dream team, Dan, you mentioned you didn't have anybody in there. That was made up of Caleb Jewell, Ben Compton, Sam Hain, Saif Zabe, Sam Curran, Rayan Ahmed, Joe Clark, Calvin Harrison, Dylan Pennington, Mohammed Abbas, and the new signing for Glamorgan for one game and one game only, Matt Kuhneman. A lot of hundreds being scored, a lot of spin being bowled. What do you make of that team? Is there any of those players that you'll be looking at kind of going forward to bring into your championship side?
Possibly, depending on availability. So I've had Caleb Jewell in my team, and then actually ended up getting rid of him. So I was a little bit of a question of what might have been there. Obviously, you've been strong on Safe Save for a while, match involvement potentially. Sam Curran, high match involvement as well, and if he's going to be available for Surrey, that's definite consideration for me. And yeah, if Mohammed Abbas comes back for Nottinghamshire, I would definitely consider him as well. But I was just not. I wasn't far off looking at him in the last couple of game weeks actually, but I just didn't really want to get involved because I wasn't sure how much he's going to be available after the blast.
Yeah, that's the tough one, isn't it? To try and figure out. Yes, you want to win this week, but actually you've got to take into consideration those future weeks as well. So,
Yeah.
what about your player of the week? Who stood out for you, good or bad? Who deserves a bit of a glow up or a dressing down from your side?
Oh, it's going to be a blow up this week. It's going to be George Hill, who has been in my team now for a good few weeks and picked up 228 points in this game week we've just had. I think he's an under the radar higher match involvement player, which is, we talked about the Ian Hollands and Logan Van Beeks and Ed Barnards and Jordan Clarks and Ryan Higgins of this world. But actually, at under 7 million, George Hill has been a really, really consistent point scorer for me. Bats top 6, although his batting output hasn't been fantastic this year, but has bowled a lot of overs, took 5 for in the first innings in this game week, and picked up, say, 228 points. I reckon he's probably one of the higher players in the game so far for points per million.
Well, I can tell you he is the highest point scorer in the game in that opening 7 weeks. 1,479 points at an average of 211.29 points per game for George Hill. So, yeah, one of those high match involvement all-rounders at a good price and someone that's having a fantastic season as well. I'm going to go for the Nottinghamshire loanee at Northamptonshire. I'm going to go for Calvin Harrison. Now, Calvin Harrison still returned a fantastic amount of points for me on game week 7, and one of which I was actually quite tempted to chuck him the captain's armband with that double Captain Googly used. I mistakenly went for Ed Barnard though, but I got a little bit of inside trading in the morning, which is always kind of helpful, isn't it, when you go off to one of the counties and you get told a few things. And obviously he was batting 9, I think, still converted that innings in the first innings to a 50+ score, take some outstanding catches in the slip cordon, and will have, whilst he was at Northamptonshire at least anyway, had a huge role to play with ball in hand on a pitch that was not favourable to the seamers, I think would be fair to say. So, only returned 5 wickets, I think returned about 260 points for me as well with those. And I mean, through the course of his stint with Northamptonshire, he's returned 1,200 points at an average of 200 points per game. So, someone there that classes as a bowler, but you definitely get match involvement with bat in hand and in the field as well. So, it'll be interesting to see. That's the end of his loan spell with Northamptonshire. He will go back to Nottinghamshire with the Blast. He's an integral part, or was an integral part, to that white ball squad for the Outlaws. But is he going to play some more red ball cricket for Northants? That I can tell you I haven't got inside trading for, and I don't know the answer to it. But if you are interested in keeping up to date with these new signings and loans and overseas players coming in, make sure you are following the Cricket Draft across all of the socials, whether that's X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. All of the information will be there for you, including predicting 11s, availability, injury news, not just for the County Championship, but also for the T20 Blast as well. So make sure you are following the Cricket Draft. And some things you might have missed from game week 7. And there's some funny ones here. But Alex Lees was dismissed for 0 at 2 minutes to 11 on day 1. So the questions raised there is whether it should actually count or not. Gregory and Josh Davey, they opened the batting again for Somerset with opening batter Andy Umeed batting at number 7. Somerset won, but it's topsy-turvy there at the moment. Colleen took 5 wickets for Durham on debut in that same fixture. Hampshire recorded 5 ducks in that first innings, and I think I did quite well not to get Tom Prest and Liam Dawson in either of those. Matt Kuhneman comes in for 1 game, takes 7 wickets for Glamorgan to win their game and put them into 2nd, and I think they might just be 3rd now in the Championship in Division 2. Charlie Allison got a duck in the first innings and 140 in the second. Sam Curran opened the bowling and batted 4 for Surrey. So again, Dan, if he is going to be available, could be a great shout. Burns and Sibley, now sit down for this one, but they were both stumped by Essex in that second innings, and I mean, that can't happen very often, can it? And finally, Northants and Gloucester, in their first innings, they both used 8 bowlers each. So, yeah, Sam Curran coming into the team.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be if he's available for Surrey. I mean, that's a no-brainer having someone opening the bowling and batting number 4. And there's a few other interesting bits that in that list that you've mentioned there, Dan. Kuhneman coming in, taking 7 wickets for Glamorgan, as you mentioned, a huge differential, but because he's only coming in for 1 game, it means it costs you a transfer, whether it's free or penalty, but to bring him in, and then another one to take him out. So actually, yes, it's a differential, but there are associated costs with that. Burns and Sibley being stumped. Pepper bowled Harmer both times, both players. So yeah, that was a pretty unique one. And that Northants Gloucester sort of stat of 8 bowlers in the first innings is an interesting one, because actually it means that they're sharing it around a little bit, which isn't great if you're a buyer of stocks of frontline bowlers for their team, but might be good if you've got a few batters who players who qualify as batters who can get some overs in.
Yeah, give you a few extra bonus points. You never know, do you? Overseas players. Obviously, we're going to look ahead now to Game Week 8, and you do get 2 free transfers for that Game Week 8. It's back to normal and will be for the remainder of the season. But some of these players are likely, and I'll stress likely, to be available. They're coming over for the Blast. They've got that block of championship fixtures in the middle, and then the potential kind of back end of the season as well. But there's a few here to think about, but Neil Wagner at Durham, Hayden Kerr at Glamorgan, Divald Brevis at Hampshire, Wes Agar returns for Kent, Ashton Turner, he will be at Lancashire along with Chris Green, Sean Masood will be there for the rest of the season with Leicestershire, Kane Williamson, of course, flies over for Middlesex. Josh Little is going to be around in that Middlesex dressing room as well. He could play. Yuzvendra Chahal returns for Northamptonshire. Riley Meredith at Somerset. Gurinder Sandhu, another one of these Sussex overseas seamers, will turn up. And finally, Will Sutherland will be available to play for Yorkshire. There is a lot there to look at and to unpick, and there'll be a few players that need to offload a few of those overseas cricketers that aren't then going to be available. But is there any of those other than Yuzvendra Chahal who's going to make your team? Because if you're not picking Yuzvendra Chahal for Northamptonshire, you're doing something terribly wrong.
Well, he was one of the players on my list that I was definitely looking at, particularly if we're going to get some spin conducive conditions, which obviously we're not going to know yet because we don't know what the weather's going to be like after the blast. But yeah, that's definitely a consideration. Deval Brevis is a really interesting option as well because he's been in fantastic form for CSK in the IPL recently. Obviously a different format, but I think a really positive form line for him. Shan Masood, I think, will really thrive at Leicestershire in Division 2. I think he'll get a mountain of runs in the second half of the season. And Will Sutherland, I think, is going to be an interesting one because if his bowling workload is decent, he's going to have really high match involvement. And actually, yes, that's a good thing for Will Sutherland's buyers, but maybe not such a good thing for George Hill buyers. So let's see how the implications from that pan out.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one to balance up there, isn't it? But look, that's Game Week 7 wrapped up and a look ahead to Game Week 8. So we will welcome in BBC presenter Ben Cajee for his little recap of the start of the County Championship. Well, Ben, thank you for joining us, an avid cricket draft player. How are you, firstly? And then secondly, how's your team doing?
Hey, no worries. It's nice to see you. Thanks for having me on. I'm good. How are you getting on? Are you all right?
We're doing pretty well. I'm delighted to say that I am, and I'm going to say it for the second time of the episode, but at the halfway stage of the championship, I am actually beating the expert. So, hey, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that's what we like. Good news. I'm doing okay this season, actually. I had a little look this morning because I knew you were going to ask me this, and I'm up to 57th, which I will happily take. At the beginning of the season, I thought if I can finish top 500, I'll be quite happy with that. So, yeah, halfway through. I don't want to count my chickens, but it's going okay so far.
Some dizzying heights, Dan. You've got some catching up to do here, mate.
I know. I'm behind both of you. And although I'm not that far outside the top 500 myself, I think 560th or something like that. But you guys blazing a trail and give me plenty of work to do for the second half of the season, that's for sure.
I thought I was doing all right, but we're in a BBC Sport little mini league. And there's a guy in there called Andrew, and he is top overall. So every time I go on, I'm like, okay, well, I'm 1,400 points behind the guys leading the whole thing. So it's a big reality check for me when I think I'm doing okay.
Maybe we should have Andrew on as a guest as well.
Yeah, he has got the tips. Every week I think, I've done quite well here, and then I look at his team and go, nope.
Hey, well, you're sat top of the tree of this episode, so you can definitely give yourself a good pat on the back for that one. Exactly. Who's been your standout selection for this summer? I suppose you could. Well, good, I think, is going to be the answer, bearing in mind that you're 57th in the entire competition. I don't think the bad one's going to come into it. But who have you enjoyed watching? Who's done really well for you for your team? And I suppose which transfer maybe have you made that other people might have missed?
Do you know what? It's the transfers where you think I really shouldn't have done that. I really like Jordan Clark, and he always goes under the radar. Hardly anyone seems to talk about him. Like guaranteed wickets, get runs in the middle order, and then 2 weeks ago I was like, yeah, it's time. I'm going to bring Higgins in for the first time this season, and he did okay that week. But Jordan Clark scored 330 points or something. I thought, no, just trust your gut. That's what you've got to do. Just stick and stay strong with your team selections. I think I've been quite lucky, actually. I seem to have timed things quite nicely this season. Abbott as a bowler, like gun bowler, just guaranteed points. The other week when he got 400 and something points, and you're just checking the ECB up about every 15 minutes. I need to get a life. All-rounders key, you guys know this, but I love all-rounders that can do both. So you've got 4 chances of picking up points. I'm a big Warwickshire fan, so Ed Barnard for me has been pretty much a mainstay in my team this season. I didn't captain too well this week. I thought, I'll do well against Worcestershire's old team. And I think out of my 10 other players, I could have had 9 who'd have scored better if I'd double captained them. But he's been brilliant. Holland, great find. And then kind of cheaper options as well, like Kellaway, just like 4.8 million and just has got a stupid amount of points. Didn't he have his university exams?
Yeah.
Week? It's absolutely mad. Imagine like playing first class cricket while you're at uni. It's been a decent start, but you know what it's like. You can have one bad week and tumble, or conversely one good week and shoot up that table. So halfway to go.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. That shooting up the table, that's for sure. With you guys ahead of me, and I've got Higgins and Jordan Clark in my team at the moment, and Ed Barnard as well. All rounders seem to be all right for me. It's the rest of them that's the problem.
Yeah, but it's those kind of little calls. So last week I brought Jimmy in on Thursday night. I was like, or whenever it was, when he was in the squad, I was like, Jimmy's going to play. Good feeling. And then obviously the teams get announced, and I needed to get him out as quickly as possible. And I had Toby Rowland-Jones, and I thought, this is risky. TRJ gets points for fun. I'm going to go with Matt Henry. Now, in one way, good call, because Matt Henry got 230 points, but Rowland-Jones got, I think, 254, so I'd have been better if I'd have just stuck still. But Matt Henry's a great bowler, and Somerset seem to be on the up. Have they won their last 3 games?
Yeah, 3 on the bounce for Somerset, isn't it? And some of them have been pretty hard fought as well. That one at Durham, literally just finishing this weekend after that first innings. I don't think many people would have put their money on Somerset there, but it was an incredible comeback from the team that have travelled all the way up the country to Chester Street. How about your tactics? Now, this is something that we should all be listening to. I mean, you don't get into the top 100 by accident on the cricket draft, but are there any tactics that you absolutely build your team around? You mentioned the high match involvement all-rounders, which is, again, I think kind of starting to become a little bit cliched on the cricket draft here, but is there anything else that you look for?
A little bit, kind of look at form, and then sometimes fixtures. The thing is, with this season, it's great from kind of a neutral's perspective, because this is a massive cliche, but it almost feels like anyone can beat everyone. There have been some real shock results. So kind of looking at matchups, this season's been quite nice as well, because the rain hasn't played too much of a part. I say that, I'm a big Warwickshire Bears fan, and obviously yesterday the rain stopped us hopefully getting a win against Worcestershire. Did we lose 47 overs or something? But having that nice kind of balance. I think the great thing about cricket draft is you could have an incredible 11 on paper that if it went out and actually played a game of cricket would probably win, but you might put that team out in the game and not do very well at all. So it's a really good leveler. Having those all-rounders that can do bits. I like getting a wicket-keeper that can bat but also gets high dismissals. So I've got Simpson at the moment. He was like a mainstay in my team last year. And the beginning of this season, I've never met John Simpson, but I felt like I let him down because I brought in a different wicket-keeper and I was like, what have I done? Because he had such a great start to the season. Which is also another reason why you should trust your gut, because I thought, they've gone up to Div 1, is he going to do as well? And then he scored a stupid amount of points in those first few weeks. I'd say when it comes to those calls, like trust your intuition and instinct, because there are loads of times when you think the sensible thing to do here is X, but you want to do the opposite, and then when you go with the sensible option and it doesn't work out, you end up kicking yourself.
Yeah, I know Dan and I, we've been close to making the right decisions, haven't we? And then elected not to at the final minute. And you look back at it and you think, what an idiot. Why on earth didn't I pay that 75-point transfer fee to bring this guy in and played it safe? But Yeah, it's been good fun. It has been good fun. There is a change of pace coming, of course, starting on Thursday for the T20 Blast. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Hopefully, Ben, that you've already built your squad and that's ready to go for that competition. But with county cricket in particular, you mentioned you're a big Warwickshire fan. How did the love for county cricket start? Was it a case of a trip to Edgbaston as a youngster with your parents and enjoying the sunshine?
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. We moved to the Midlands in 1994, and people are going to be like, "Oh, glory hunter." I can assure you that I'm not. I support West Ham United, and we are a very average football team. Excuse me, but yeah, we moved in '94. My dad worked for Birmingham City Council, and we got season tickets at Warwickshire. So I was 7, and yeah, that year was unbelievable with Warwickshire winning the treble and Brian Lara being there and the team that we had. I think I could probably still name all of that team. And last game of the season in the Sunday League, I think we had, I'm going to say it was Gloucester away, and my dad was honorary 12th man. So I went with my uncle Ian, who's not actually my uncle, but sat with him in the stands, and my dad was like walking around the boundary and doing the drinks and all that kind of stuff. And then after the game, I got to go into the dressing room with all of the players. So we've got this photo of me sat on Brian Lara's lap.
Brilliant.
And I've still got Graham Welsh's hat, and it says Pop inside. And I had Neil Smith's jumper, and yeah, Dermot Reeve was there, Dom Osler, Asif Din, Keith Piper. Just, yeah, the best kind of memories.
Were you allowed any of that stuff, or were they just too scared to kind of tell the youngster not to walk out the dressing room with the kid?
No. I didn't steal it. they gave it to me. And then 95, I think we had Alan Donald, maybe the year after, and then Sean Pollock the year after that. And when Pollock made his debut and got 4 in 4 balls, I was there with my dad. So that was pretty special. And then I worked for the International Cricket Council between 2012 and 2015. And always I'd kind of gone, if I see Brian Lara again, I need to kind of say, Brian, have a look at this photo. And I thought, maybe I should go. Can we recreate this? It might have been a bit weird. So, I just showed him this picture and said, "Hey, Brian, this is me and you 20 years ago." And he just like nodded and went, "Cool." That was it. He did sign it for me. And we did have a photo, but I didn't sit on his lap. So
Probably,
yeah.
I think you probably erred on the side of caution there, didn't you, on that side?
Yeah,
hey,
I think so. Yeah.
Dan, you've obviously got a bit of an inside kind of link there to the teams that play out of Edgbaston. How do you reckon about bringing the honorary 12th man back for the Phoenix? And do you fancy doing it yourself?
Well, I was wondering if, Ben, your dad was actually fielding as the honorary 12th man, didn't drop any catches or anything like that. No,
He didn't get onto the pitch.
Yeah,
that would have been bad.
Honorary 12th man, I don't think I'd want to do it, that's for sure. I mean, I'm a catcher, might be okay. Used to play in goal and Sunday League football for many years. My fitness might not be up to scratch. I don't think I'd want to be a boundary rider, that's for sure. And it's so interesting to hear Ben's stories of that Warwickshire dressing room. I know a few of the guys he's mentioned, Dom Osler, Graham Welsh, like obviously working in cricket at the moment, and Osler was with us at Phoenix as one of the women's coaches for a good few years, actually, until recently. And I met Brian Lara at the IPL auction in 2022. He's a really nice guy. And when you meet someone that famous and they introduce themselves, giving their first name, you know that they're a really humble guy, and that was really nice. That's something I definitely look for when I'm meeting world famous people.
Did you sit on his lap as well?
Certainly not.
Just checking, just seeing if that's what we all do. But
he was working for a rival team. What can I say?
Yeah, no, fair enough. Keep that separate then. Keep the camp separate. Finally, Ben, obviously the Blast starts on Thursday. Is that a competition that interests you as a cricket fan, or are you a Red Bull purist? And then do you have if you do like both, have you got your team sorted for the Blast?
I do like both, but I haven't got a team. I know you're going to be disappointed with that. I'm a bit of a traditionalist with Cricket Draft. Also, it is just a way for me not to be checking the app every 15 minutes throughout every game day. No, I'm just going to focus on kind of supporting Warwickshire throughout that competition and kind of watching it from afar, and stick with the Red Bull competition. But yeah, I think I like all the different kind of varieties and game formats. Growing up, we'd go to the Sunday League for like 40 over competition. It's mad now. You look at those games and 160, 170 was a good score. But that was my introduction to cricket. We'd go as a family, and like I said, 1994, I was 7 years old, and we lived in the Midlands till like 98, so I was 11. And you'd be able to go on the outfield and maybe play in between innings and be in and around Edgbaston with your friends. And I remember the smells and stuff so clearly. You know, those kind of, probably shouldn't say about this, but like little tobacco cigars, like the little brown ones. Every time I smell, and you don't smell them that often now, but I walked past someone the other week and they were smelling one. I was like, just reminds me of being at Edgbaston as a kid, like just drifting through the air, and someone's shouting, "You bet!" like super loud. I just have the best memories, and it felt so accessible. It still does now. I think that's one of the reasons that I love county cricket so much. You know, being a football fan as well, there are times when you feel so disconnected from the players and from the team and the commercial kind of aspect. Whereas I've been really lucky since working in broadcasting to work in some kind of cricket capacity. So I did some stadium hosting at the 2019 World Cup and did some ECB stuff. We had press conferences for All Stars cricket where the kids would get to ask questions to the players, and that was just like the best. Some of those players were unbelievable with the kids, like Chris Wokes. I remember just being amazing with
fantastic
with
guy,
kids.
yeah, lovely guy,
Yeah, just the best, and like really up for what the kids are asking him. I remember this little girl asked Alistair Cook, said, if you could marry any Disney princess, which Disney princess would you marry? And he actually answered it, and was just, they were so great and on a level with those young people and making a difference to them and giving them their time. And I think that's one of the really special things about the game, and most people, as you were talking about, being humble and wanting to give back and just being like custodians of the sport, that it was there before they started playing and it'll be there afterwards, and having that community feel. And you know, with other kind of formats now like the 100, and I hosted a couple of those games at the Oval last year, and the difference between a Thursday night game where people are going in after work and maybe sinking a few beers to then Sunday when it's massively family orientated and you've got so many young kids there, and they're more interested in talking to me about Dodge the Dog or Mr. Tumble than they are about cricket. Having that kind of differential is amazing, that it can work on different levels, and it's a way of, for purists, bringing people into the game and getting them involved, and then seeing that progression, and then hopefully getting their love of the longer formats of the game as well.
Yeah, we are very lucky to have such a fantastic sport and played, and as you say, kind of looked after by such a fantastic bunch of individuals as well. So, Ben, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for chatting all things cricket and the cricket draft. Good luck for the remainder of the Red Bull season with your team. Hopefully not too much luck. Hopefully there'll be, well, hopefully you'll catch up with the bigwig at the BBC who's sat at the top of the table in your little league. But hopefully Dan and I can do a bit of catching up.
Both of you boys will be far ahead of me, and we can do this again, and you can be like, what happened? But yeah, thanks so much for having me, and hope you enjoy the Blast and the international season as well, and hopefully catch up with you both soon.
Well, there we go. Fantastic to be joined by Ben. Always, it's insightful, isn't it, to have a listen and have a chat with others how they're interpreting the games, and yeah, hopefully some useful things for you there from Ben. But hey, should you be listening to anybody other than our analyst and expert, Dan Weston? Dan, the Blast starts on Thursday. It's here. Blast off. Well, that's not actually Thursday because that doesn't work. I think that's Friday at Birmingham, but we won't worry about the technicalities of the advertising there for that. But have you made any updates for that team that you announced last week on the channel? I must admit I haven't. I've been fully focused on Championship cricket, and I had 4 full days of commentary at Northamptonshire, which was great, but I'm a bit exhausted from that. So I'm looking forward to a change of pace.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been in championship mode a little bit in terms of my TCD activity, but I haven't made any changes yet, but I will be. And I think this is inevitable because we've got so much to talk about and to plan over these first few game weeks with a lot of ifs, buts and maybes in terms of player availability. I am definitely going to adapt my team, create a spreadsheet for all the team's matches in each game week, we get 3 transfers per game week, so I'm really going to try and maximise my match involvement, both in terms of match involvement in each game, but also the game week as well. And and then the other thing, of course, is the availability of a lot of the top English domestic players for the first couple of game weeks, given the Lions playing, and also England's white ball squads as well.
Yeah, well, let's have a run through some of those players, Dan, and I reckon you're going to be building one of these spreadsheets again, like you did for the Big Bash, which saw you do pretty well, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think that actually we've got a lot of players with problematic availability at the high end of the domestic market. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the ODIs and T20s against West Indies decimate the top domestic players in TCD, and so we're going to have to be really, really astute with our picks. I might swerve a lot of players just for these first few game weeks. And then also in terms of the Lions, James Rue, Jordan Cox, Ben McKinney, Dan Mousley, Farhan Ahmed. These are all players who I think would have been popular among TCD players, but may not be available, or may be available at short notice. We never know with this stuff. So yeah. But I want guarantees of availability probably, and I'm going to be a little bit cautious about those players in the various England squads.
Right then, Dan. What tactics are you putting into this spreadsheet? There's a few that need to be considered, aren't there, through the course of the blast? One of which I think is going to be the trickiest for cricket draft players is to just keep an eye on how many games each of the sides are playing in each of the game weeks.
Absolutely, and then probably as well on top of that, looking at their game week count in following game weeks as well, because you don't want to pick a lot of players who have got 3 games in one game week and then 1 game in the subsequent game week. So it's almost like you're trying to just game week maximisation from that spreadsheet, and availability maximisation, as we spoke about a bit as well, in terms of that England Lions, England white ball. There's a lot of questionable or unavailability for a lot of the top players in this competition, and we've got to factor all of that in, and I'm going to be creating a master spreadsheet which is going to have high game involvement in terms of the output in an individual match, high game involvement in terms of games and game week, and high availability likelihood as well. So yeah, that's going to be my sweet spot hopefully, and if with a bit of luck maybe might get revenge on you for the current championship showing.
Hey, you're the white ball master. You beat me in the Big Bash, so you've got the crown there to be snatched away from you. But just to give those of you that are watching and listening just a little bit of insight and see kind of how what Dan said there is kind of a point that you might need to think about. Lancashire, for example, have got 3 games in game week 1, so they start off the competition really strongly. Derbyshire and Glamorgan, they have 3 games in game week 2. So therefore, you could potentially look at having a few more Derbyshire and Glamorgan players in game week 1, which then carry through to game week 2, where they'll then have the 3 games. Worcestershire and Essex, they're consistent. They could be the spine of your team. They have 2 games per game week, all the way through the competition. So they could be a good 2 set of players to have a look at and make sure that you've got 2-3 of those players in your team, because you know they're consistently going to be playing throughout those game weeks, rather than have the 3s and the 1s, which just create a little bit of confusion and uncertainty. Look, the cricket draft are kind to you on the Big Bash. You will get 3 free transfers per week during the T20 Blast. So you can have a little bit more flexibility than what you would get in the county championship, which, with a nod to those kind of fixtures in balance, I think is something that's really important. And then finally as well, game week 5, so about midway through the tournament, you will get 6 free transfers if you haven't quite got your team right. So I think, Dan, we're going to see quite a lot of movement, aren't we, across our squads, and then also everybody's squads that's playing. I don't see many people not using all of them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm probably going to be looking to try and plan my transfers in advance, almost, actually, to try and... Well, obviously, we know that things can happen that throw those plans awry a little bit, but that's the plan for me at the moment, is just to have those transfers worked out in advance. And then in game week 5, I can do that overhaul if I want to with those 6 transfers.
Yeah, the penalty transfers still exist. They will still cost you minus 75 points, which, if your team only has one game in that week, that can become quite tricky to overhaul. However, if you're looking to make a penalty transfer and the player that's coming in is playing for a team that has 3 games in that next game week, then 75 points isn't that big of a margin, or isn't that big of a penalty to actually kind of recoup that back. So again, that's just something else to think about, and something else, Dan, for you to factor into your spreadsheet there. And then finally, about the T20 Blast, and it's something that's going to be launched within the next 24 hours, is that the women's fantasy game on the Cricket Draft is going to be available for all of their fixtures as well. So if the men's game and the county championship isn't enough for you to keep track on and figure out where you're going to be, you've got a third competition there as well, Dan, which I think is another competition you and I need to build teams for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to that. Spent a lot of time working on the women's game as well, so hopefully a decent base of knowledge there that will propel me and hopefully you to some glory in the women's comp as well. And just on that point you made about the 75 points for the penalty transfer when they've got 3 game weeks. I look. It's such an interesting tactic and dynamic of this Blast tournament where you've got a real clump of matches in a game week for some teams, and as you say, it's very, very hard to overhaul 75 points in T20 in one match, whereas obviously we've been sort of praising that potential in the championship with 4 innings, but if you've got the scope for 2 extra matches for a player, it may well be worth it, and especially for those sort of high match involvement all-rounders that we keep talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are going to be a key position across both of the T20 games on the Cricket Draft. Dan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us once again and having a chat through all things cricket. Fantastic to have a chat with Ben as well. And hey, Dan, good luck. Enjoy diving into your Excel spreadsheet.
Can't
and
wait.
Building your model. So nobody's going to see you for the next 24, 48 hours, are they?
I'm going to be living in a darkened room.
Thanks for watching. See you next week.